Hi, you're listening to She Shield Podcast, your one-stop pod for all topics personal safety. I'm your host, Sofia, and my goal is to help educate women and men on concealed carry, martial arts, and all topics self-defense. This episode is brought to you by Big Tex Ordnance, your soon-to-be favorite retailer for all of your firearms needs. BTO believes in only selling high-quality gear for responsibly armed citizens, as well as providing pre- and post-sale support. BTO values firearms training and supports firearms instructors nationwide. They even pay for their own staff to train with high-level instructors to ensure that when you as the consumer reach out, you are taken care of. Today, we have John Valentine on the show. He came highly recommended from one of the previous guest speakers, so I knew I had to get him on as soon as possible. So, John, I would love for you to introduce yourself.
All right. Well, first, Sophia, please, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. And Kristen, thank you for recommending me. I really appreciate that. So guys, my name is John Valentine. I'm originally from New York. I'm a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu. I went through the entire Rangemaster program, their master development. I graduated top gun and top shot in that course. And now I travel around. I teach people combatives and an integrated approach to self-defense, and I focus really on teaching people how to be the human weapon system of moral character. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
That was beautiful. So by the human weapon system of moral character, do you mean kind of like soft skills and building those kind of like preemptive skills, not just?
Well, I think I think really it's going back to, well, like, look, anybody can be violent, anybody can fight, anybody can cause pain. But as far as enduring pain and enduring a struggle, taking on a burden of performance, and for people that you care about, and whether that is your family, your community, all the way up to your country, I think that's really what it's about, that you are doing something in service of others and not just for this narcissism that people like, you're doing something you're serving something bigger than you.
That's wonderful. Yes, I like that a lot. So even more foundational. That's amazing. Yes. And I know we talked about this a little bit pre-show, but I would love for you to tell the listeners kind of your history and how you came to sharing that today.
Yeah, I mean, this is a beautiful accident. Just kind of coming out of just a question of like, how do I do this? And what I mean by how do I do this is, when I first got introduced to concealed carry, I was a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, and the qualification course was a 3, 5, and 7 yard string. I never did anything cool in the Army, but I did know that bullets don't turn people into dust. I knew that people can continue to fight. And in fact, it's a running joke that the people that only, like, when they get shot and scream, "Oh, I'm hit," is just like, that's in the movies, right? People kind of like, Tom Gibbons has a pretty famous saying, like, what do people do when they were shot? Well, the same thing they would do before they would get shot. So,
Okay.
and that's just kind of how it is. Like, the human body is extremely resilient. And people can fight through quite a bit of pain. And with that in mind, I knew that, all right, if I'm at an arm's reach and I shoot somebody, like, it's going to be a fight. They're going to be fighting for the gun, and I wanted to learn kind of what, in my mind, sounded like a concealed carry combatives course. So that was the first thing I asked, and the instructor tells me, "No, you just shoot him." And it's like, that kind of goes against everything you just taught me this weekend, bro. And so so that kind of put me on a mission to really find the answer to this question. And I ended up being part of a readiness network ran by a retired Green Beret. And I asked him that question, and it brought up the same situation. And he agreed that the idea of the guy was a former medic. So he agreed that, yeah, like, people don't just lay down when they get shot. So he tells me, well, like, look, you're a purple belt. You've been shooting, like, you're probably better qualified to come up with an answer to this than me. And, I didn't feel like I knew enough to come out and, like, hang a shingle. So I was like, all right, well, who else would know? So the first person that came to mind was Matt Larsen, who created the Army Combatives program. I was like, all right, there's no way I'm going to find this dude. Like, so I'll just like Google him, see what happens. And go into it, look him up. And God's work is that he was running a gym 10 minutes from where I was living in Northern Virginia. So I go over there, go talk to him and start training with him. After a few months, we go from discussing this whole problem of concealed carry marksmanship to me ended up working for him. And we ended up working in a contract in the DC area for about 2 years. And it just kind of snowballed from there. So I ended up working for Sheepdog Response as a little bit, then and kind of working with other companies like Green Ops, Defensive Shooting Academy out of Tulsa, starting Strength now, and now I have like my own brand of Deeds of Arms, and yeah, that's pretty much it where we're at right now.
Wonderful. And tell us about Deeds of Arms.
So the concept of Deeds of Arms, right? The I think that this whole thing of like, oh, that soft men create hard times. I think it's kind of cart before horse. I think it's like what do men tolerate from other men that allow soft men to thrive, that allow the hard times to come. And I think that we don't. I think that you become, let's say, like a man of agency, like you're a man of action, and
Mhm.
you just solve problems, and then you end up secluding yourself, and you end up not teaching others the way. You don't really give other young men a path to become men of agency. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do with Deeds of Arms is I'm trying to show people that what they're capable of, because uh, uh, life as a man is that you are very, very insecure. You understand that this is burden of performance. You're married to this lady and she believes that you can actually handle yourself, but you know deep in your heart, like, I can't really do that. Like, I love you, honey, but I can't really do that. I got to go learn some shit. And so it's like, I think it's creating a situation for guys to do that in an effectively,
Yeah.
and do it in a way that is not incredibly time consuming and low bar enough to where anyone can do it, but high bar enough to where it's like this will like the integrated approach to self defense that's going to keep you going for the rest of your life, because it's like there's just always something new to learn and always an area to improve. So the idea of Deeds of Arms that comes from peacetime in Europe, when men didn't have wars going on. So what they do is they arrange battle drills and they just fight each other. And it was really controlled, but also very intense. And it's just kind of putting a modern spin on that whole concept today.
That's wonderful. And is it kind of, uh, I remember at ECQC, Craig talked about how experience is hard to come by in the sense that it's hard to get experience before you have experience. So it's like you create as practical of a situation as you can. Is that kind of what that is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and really, just because experience is a terrible teacher, because experience like that could be your last experience. So why would you want that? Why
Yeah.
would you want that to be your teacher? So
Right.
I
Good way
think
to
as
say it.
far as like you're trying to perform at a time where seconds and inches matter, it's like the time. It's like let's do that in a controlled environment. Let's fail here. Let's see it is so that way we don't have to go through the consequences of post traumatic stress, experiencing a life changing injury. Let's do that within a controlled environment to where you'll get into those things. You'll have the tools. And I think when you have the physical tools, the soft skills are really, it's like, it's like investing in those soft skills, because now they have a compounding interest, because now when there's a verbal discussion, so now Sofia is very, very trained. She's a highly trained killer. So like now we start having that conversation. Whenever Sofia says something to me, that has teeth because she has physical skills behind that. Right. So
Right.
that,
Yeah.
does that answer your question?
Yes, that does. That makes a lot of
Okay.
sense. Yeah. So, what would you say for someone who is kind of entering the self defense space? Say in this situation in the situation you discussed earlier, where maybe the man in the relationship is realizing he doesn't know as much as his partner thinks he does.
Yeah.
Um, would you say there's a right order in which to train things, starting with like hand-to-hand combatives or going to weaponry first? How would you
Yeah.
mentor someone in that?
So the first thing is that so I have a priority list, right? A tier list
Okay.
for like the readiness building, and the first tier is going to be that you got to learn the rules, because there are so many things out there as far as like there's no rules in a street fight and blah blah blah, like a lot of platitudes out there saying by guys who are just trying to uh look like tough guys online. And it's just like, no, there's the law. But and like if you're a good person, you're gonna be worried about that. Even if you're a bad guy, like the law is like economics. You can't believe, like you don't have to believe in it to be affected by it.
Right.
So so yeah. So first thing you got to do is learn the laws. Learn the laws, federal, state, local. Okay.
Right.
Then I think it's most important. I think more important than anything else, more than picking up a handgun or taking a martial art, is you get fit. Like you got to get healthy, because if you're not healthy and you can't move, then you can't fight, and you can't do anything. And also, if you look like a soft target, then guess what you're going to be. And if you got some excess hypertrophy, especially like as a man, if you got some excess muscle, guys are bad guys are selective. They're looking for crimes of opportunity. They're looking for the easy payday. So if you look physically imposing, they're probably not going to mess with you. And what that's going to do for you is going to give you time. And what I mean by that is that you will have time to go seek out professional training. You'll be able to develop your handgun skills. You'll be able to develop your martial arts skills, which is part of like getting fit. Is that it's a 2-for-1 approach, because you are learning how to fight and you're getting fit at the same time. Because if we had guys that only did PT and another group of guys that only did jiu-jitsu, and we made them fight, we can easily surmise who's going to win, right?
Right.
So that's kind of how I approach it. Is like, if you really care about your life, or you're talking about self-defense, that you have to do things to preserve self, right? Preserve your self-interest. And as much as there are some horrible crimes out there with cell phones and CCTV. Like we can see endless videos of people being victimized in horrible ways. But
Yeah.
still, the top 10 causes of mortality in the United States are health related.
Yeah.
So it's like those are your biggest threats. So you got to start there. You got to really take a practical approach. And if you're not seriously invested in your health, then like you're just kind of putting a Band-Aid on a big open wound that needs a tourniquet. So is that
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. I remember when I trained jiu-jitsu, like on a consistent basis. Anyway, I a lot of people were interested, but they would tell me they wanted to get fit first, and I would be like, "This is the way, man! Like jiu-jitsu will get you right into shape."
Oh yeah.
And yeah, so I love that you made that comparison. That's so true. It just unlocked a few memories there. And I would always have them come and watch a class, and the sweat alone on the ground was just you know
Yeah.
um, proof enough. So that's lovely. And then say someone is already in that place where they feel comfortable with their physical fitness and maybe their hand-to-hand combat, and they're wanting to kind of get into concealed carry. What would you say would be the next step for them?
I mean, the typical step is to I would say, yeah, get your concealed carry license. I mean, if for nothing at all, at least you understand the rules. You start learning force. You definitely want to pick up as much material as you can. So, like, I like to read a lot. I think it's reading. It gives me an opportunity to learn from other people's mistakes instead of making my own. And thankfully, like there's a lot of very very good literature out there. I know it's like these days we're in the TLDR generation, so people don't really want to, but you can set things for audiobooks. But there's a lot of really great material out there. And if you want condensed versions of that, then this is training today has been better than ever. And like you can even go on YouTube and learn a lot, listen to podcasts like this one. And there's just so many different ways to consume really high quality, great information that isn't going to steer you wrong. And because I could say from somebody when I came into this industry looking to get involved in concealed carry like 10 years ago. I mean, even today, there's still a lot of platitudes that just won't die. But then, I mean, like 2012, like Jesus Christ, it was horrible, just crazy things that people believed. And there are some people that still believe that, people with cult followings that kind of still believe the things.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things I love about what I do now is that you don't even have to listen to me. You can trust your own experience about like this is what happened. Like I don't have to, like I didn't make that up.
Right.
And as far as the results of when you get the blue guns out or you get the shot timer out, the results there are impartial. That's all you. And like, all right, let's try it this way and see what happens. And the results there are impartial. Like that's not me trying to affect or trying to create my, impose my own influence and my own opinion on the reality. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And thank you for shouting out the podcast in there. Yes, there is no shame. I just want to go back to something you said. There's no shame in busting out an audiobook or a podcast. It's better than nothing,
yeah.
especially if you have a full time job, which most people do. And um, maybe even train on the side already and have goals in another sense for like maybe you're training for bodybuilding or maybe just a CrossFit competition, something like that.
Mhm.
It's okay to like slowly add things in like that. I really like that you said that. Yeah, there's no shame in that. So
Yeah.
yeah, very, very wonderful. So I'm so excited to talk about this. So if you have anything else you want to say to that, please feel free. Otherwise, I would love to ask you about the Combatives Association Summit. I know we
Okay.
talked a little bit before, but for
Yeah.
those of the listeners that do not know, what would you say about that?
So the Combatives Association Summit. I mean, it's a super biased opinion, right? Because
Right.
these are like all
Yes.
my friends and all
Yeah.
people like I love and respect, right?
Right.
But
At least you
I
admit it.
I will say that in my humble opinion, I believe that this is going to be something that it's going to be it is going to how do I say this, right? It's going to be a milestone for the industry. This is going to be a point for the industry, important for training, where we start looking at things differently. Okay, because like that 0 to 5 yard things, most instructors like they don't even touch that area. And a lot of them is like they're either, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way.
No.
Some are they feel like they don't feel qualified, and some are just not. Some
Right.
are doing it and are totally unqualified and should not. And others are just like, wow, there's just so much liability there. I don't want to touch it. And
Yeah.
as far as like going back to the previous question, truthfully, everyone needs a coach. Everyone. Okay. I like I don't plan my own programming for fitness or I prefer to kind of like have somebody dedicated to the jiu-jitsu academy when I go train jiu-jitsu as a black belt in jiu-jitsu, mind you. Okay. Um, if I love to get like one-on-one coaching, like I'll go up and get private lessons from Tim Herron. I'll spend like half a day with him. So this is some as an instructor, as a black belt in jiu-jitsu, as somebody who's been training for over 15 years, I love to get coaches and I pay coaches today. So for people looking to get into this space, right? Because now we've got 30 years of UFC, right? October is going to be 30 years, right? And because it was October 1993 that Hoist came and first showed jiu-jitsu to the world. And 30 years of UFC, we've got almost 30 years of Army Combatives program. We have 20 years of warfare. Now we have the golden age of training, right? Today, when I get somebody as a student for a basic class, they could easily be somebody at like an advanced level or master level from 10 years ago. Okay. So now it's like we almost have this perfect storm of like the market is ready for it. People are educated about what this looks like. We have enough video on YouTube and the news to show exactly what real fights look like. And we also have this group of highly skilled instructors that have been doing this for a long time. These people that have been on the road all over the world training domestic armies, foreign armies, law enforcement, all these different people with all these unique experiences coming together and one roof now, where now people can come and train with all of them. Hey, how did you solve this problem? How did you solve that? And there's also unique problems that people may not be thinking about too, because everybody might be looking at it like, okay, this is just fighting with guns. No, let's talk about let's talk about how to effectively implement a program, and how do you focus on creating a program that is successful, because that's something that a lot of people don't really think about. Everyone, because if like people, it's counterintuitive, but as soon as you turn a combatives program into a jiu-jitsu or MMA club, that's the first sign of failure, right? And if people don't think about it that way, and they don't understand why that is. But if you come to the Combatives Summit, you're going to have access to Matt Larsen, who created the Army Combatives program when there was a 1,000,000-man army. You have Craig Douglas, who is running, who is taught for all five branches of the U.S. military. Ben Redbeard, who has contracts with NSW. I was out there. I've had a contract myself and teaching now in the civilian world. And just like that's just to name a few. Right? There's like, we have 17 different instructors that you'll be able to train with over 3 days. And to add to that, instead of it being like somewhere like the nowhere USA, we're going to be doing it in Central Florida. So we're like, hey, you could send mama and the kids, or your significant other and the kids to go to Disneyland while you spend the weekend with us hanging out, So it's a great vacation spot. You've got excellent instructors. And it's going to be something that I really believe is going to change the industry.
That is incredible.
Very excited.
Oh, yeah. I can just see it on your face. That is so awesome. I mean, and I'm already sold. I've told you before, even hearing it from Kristen, I was sold. So we've talked about trying to go together, but I know I think she might have another obligation. But yes, it sounds incredible. And man, 3 days sounds like not enough time. Like if it was like 2 weeks, I would totally go. Like I'm gonna be there and just like, I'm sure it's gonna be almost a shocking amount of information, but so worth it. Like I'm so excited. And do you guys have the curriculum all ready to go? Are all the instructors
So we have we've got a sample out right now. We're still working through some things as far as like how exactly everything's going to play out.
Okay.
Just working it out with Ben's gym. So the schedule might change a little bit. For the most part, it's going to stay the same.
Okay.
The only change that hasn't been published yet, because I'm still working it out with Craig, is Craig going to start. He's going to be talking about. He's going to be giving a lecture on social fluency and social dynamics in weapons-based environment. So that's the only thing that I haven't published yet.
Okay, wonderful. No, that's so exciting. That is going to be so incredible.
Shield listeners, you guys hear it first. So
yes, absolutely. And I know the website says this, but for people wondering, who is this course for? Is it for the novice student? Is it for the professional? What would you say?
So we're welcoming everyone of every level, every background. Doesn't matter. Just come with an open mind, ready to learn. Especially like if it's just especially good if you've been doing stuff for a while, because now you get to have kind of a fresh take, and you'll be able to ask deeper questions than a novice would. And there's nothing wrong with the questions that a novice would ask, but it's just like now you have kind of that mentorship as far as like, okay, I got my program here, and how do I get it to the next step? So it's going to be even better for those guys. And now for the novice, though, it's like it's going to be truly eye-opening. It's just like things that you believe to be true. It's going to be like, oh, wow, that totally wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And it was not. And things just didn't work out the way I thought it would. And it's just like, it just doesn't play out that way. And you have people that have been doing it for so many years that it's like, you're going to be able to get definitive proof of like, okay, that is the way things work, whether I believe it or not. So
absolutely.
I think it's going to be for everyone.
That's amazing. Yeah. I actually remember preparing for ECQC and worrying about my marksmanship abilities. I obviously didn't know what I was getting into. But I remember going and being like, okay, I don't even know like how good my accuracy is from like 10 yards. So I don't know what's going to happen. And then everything was just like of course, it blew my mind. We were right in front of the target. And then once we did the sims, I realized how little marksmanship mattered. So that kind of
Yeah,
blew my mind, because that was
yeah,
something that, when you think of shooting, I feel like marksmanship is one of the first things you think of,
yeah,
Yeah. So that's a great
yeah.
way to put that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
just it's a fight with a gun. It's not really a fight or a marksmanship contest, right? That's kind of
Yeah.
where what happens with people is that in training in general, people kind of focus on what they like to do, and then they kind of like, oh, they get really good at it. People start asking them questions, and then they kind of teach what it is that they like to do. But as far as reverse engineering, as far as like what a self defense situation looks like and how that plays out, what are the dynamics? How do things? How does it get to a situation where I'm even having a discussion with this person where I don't even know, or how do I decide between someone with truly hostile intent versus someone who's just aggressive? Like I grew up in New
Yeah.
York City, and there are just homeless people that are incredibly aggressive. So I know, like, all right, I've seen this guy a couple times. I know if I just like leave him alone or give him $1, he'll just buzz off, and for a lot of people, they've never really experienced that before. Or they never really factored that into the self defense equation. And one of the things I like to tell people is that the main thing that they lose, the right that they lose as a concealed carrier is the right to be emotionally impulsive. Like you don't get that anymore. You have to
Yeah.
always be the adult in the room, and you have to maintain oversight, and you got to be mature, and you got to be good at what you do.
That is incredible. That is such a good point. I love that. I was just thinking about ahead and making that a podcast highlight on Instagram, because that needs
Yeah,
to be shared everywhere. That is so true.
yeah.
Can't be impulsive when you have a gun on you. That's awesome. Yeah, very true. So for someone who is entering that space and wanting to work more on like the mental side of things, is there an exercise that you would recommend for someone before they begin concealed carry, or maybe they already are concealed carrying but they don't really have like a perspective,
Yeah,
like a healthy
you got
perspective with it?
it's hard to just kind of set that up. I mean,
Right.
you have to like have a group of people, because that's the only way to do it is
Right.
by talking to people. Um, I don't. I'm not going to recommend people go and venture out into the ghetto or anything like that. Hey, little buddy, upstairs. So, I'm not going to
I'm sorry.
recommend people kids go upstairs now. And so yeah, I'm not going to recommend people go out and venture out into the ghetto and try to mingle with that and everything like that. Go into places they're not. But I mean, a lot of times you can. I would say that the best thing people can do right now, or without a friend, is pay extra attention to where they're looking as they're like moving from. It's like that idea of transitional spaces, like going from a car into a store, right? And then the parking lot would be a transitional space, or they're putting themselves pumping gas, right? Like, where am I positioned here? Am I like positioning myself where the gas pump is on one side, an open door is on the other side where I'm boxed in? Maybe I step on the other side of that, so where like I've got freedom of movement. Am I actually looking around and seeing who's here and what they're doing? Things of that nature. Because we live in a distracted world, and a lot of that is because attention is currency. So, and we become very accustomed to that. We're looking at a phone instead of kind of like taking in the environment, and it like that's becoming a lost skill. And we've got to remember that we've got eyes on the front of our heads instead of the side of our heads, because like we're supposed to be looking at, we're supposed to be, number one, we're hunters, and number two, we're scanning for threats. So that's why the eyes are in the front of your face, so use them. And so that's kind of where I think like would be the best, if you can um set up some kind of situations. And but it's got to be practical, I think, is obvious, but the other thing is, like, you just never know, like, what somebody has went through. and like what can kind of trigger them. So
Right.
like for instance, like somebody was abused as a kid or something like that, and then like you just start yelling at them real hard, all of a sudden they start breaking down. It's just like
Yeah.
you just never know. Or someone was a sexual assault victim, and then you start like really, putting hands, you know what I mean? They just don't know what's going to break people down.
Right.
But ultimately, people, they've got to take that stuff in doses and learn how to overcome that. Because it's like, hey, look, no one's going to care about, like, people who intend to hurt you. They're not going to care about the trauma you've been through. But like to
Right.
practice that and feel good about practicing it, you just got to take a real systematic approach to where like it doesn't scare people away, or you don't scare yourself away. You don't make it this overwhelming task that you have to accomplish. It's like I believe that it's a lot of people approach things by trying to peak out too early. And what I mean by that is everyone is looking, like they see the training I do. Like, okay, hey, we need to buy helmets, we need to get sim guns, and we need to start fighting in a confined space today. And they don't really see the approach. They don't see that there is 8 hours of shooting courses, right? And then there is like, I'm talking to these people over months, showing them how to train. And then we have another, 2-day class where we're going through the methods, going through the training methods, learning how to do repetition and refinement of these training drills, then start incorporating the techniques. Then we get into safety. Then we start actually like incorporating everything else. So it's like everyone is trying to peak instead of spreading the base.
Right.
And that's how it's able to where we can get somebody with no wrestling skill, no jiu-jitsu skill, and then he's actually able to give some guy with some training a run for his money. Because what we did was we spread the base out where it won't fail him. Right? We built that foundation, that those fundamental skills that everyone feels that they're too good for, and we've built those fundamentals to a point where they won't fail, at least for that day. I mean, obviously, if they stop training, then yeah, it's gonna go. But
Right.
for that day, because we've built it and drilled it into people over the course of 8 hours, then that's how you get that. So that's what I mean. Like we got to spread the base of people, give them a strong enough foundation that won't fail before you start trying to reach the peak. And I
That
think
makes
that's
a
how you
lot of
get
sense.
people training longer and with less injury, and
Mm.
also it makes it more satisfying, more fun.
Absolutely. Helps them see the whole picture. That was wonderful. I feel like situational awareness is a word that gets, or a phrase that gets thrown out a lot, but not really talked about enough, in
Yes.
my opinion.
Yes.
Especially, I'm TikTok for a while was kind of like my main platform because Instagram was kind of shadow banning me, and then now TikTok is. I go back and forth with them, but I see a lot of videos um, that are a combination of like CCTV of someone getting attacked, and then someone coming on and talking about like what that person should have done. And it's
Mhm.
usually just something like be more situationally aware. But how to
Yeah.
do that is not something that gets talked about enough. So I'm really glad you went into
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
that's
like the
wonderful.
people who say, "Hey, you get attacked by a knife, run away." Like, okay,
Right.
cool. Teach me how to run. Do you know the
Yes.
pose method of running? Like what's your run time? Like,
Right.
what's it like? So
Right.
it's like,
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
yeah, like that. People don't want to hear that. It's
Right.
like, it, like that's not a solution.
Right.
It's like, okay, hey, if you get into a knife fight, you're definitely gonna cut. Like, I've been into a lot of kind of fights, and I've got hurt in all of them.
Oh
It's
man.
like if you get
Yeah.
into a fight, you're probably gonna take damage. It's like
Yeah.
that's okay, but like teaching people to be resilient is the thing. It's just like you're just giving people this fear for no reason, and like just
Right.
saying that you can't really teach them anything, and like
Right.
just say that, just come on, just
Yes.
leave with that, right? So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That reminds me. I don't really know why, but when I trained Krav Maga when I was younger, the knife fighting we learned, I thought it was like so cool, and
Yeah.
I had so much fun knife sparring. And then when I went to KCC, I was like blown away by
Mhm.
everything that happens in that like close quarter space, as opposed to like engaging someone with a knife kind of
Yeah.
far away from them. That absolutely blew my mind. Do you also teach like knife control concepts type? courses
So
or?
yeah, so I have a knife combatives class where it's just kind of teaching people the self defense. Knife defense would take, I think, 2 days is gonna be good. That's like
Yeah.
you're really good if you're teaching that over 2 days, to people with no skill, right?
Yeah.
Um, but as far as knife offense, that's what I kind of teach because a lot of people
Okay.
will throw on a knife in some random way and never
Yes.
train with it.
Yeah.
So I have a knife combatives class to teach people how to use a knife for self defense. Um, and also it's a lot of it is also cautionary and it part of a it's also give people the exposure of like how physical that is because
Yeah.
it's essentially dirty boxing, right? And dirty boxing, fighting in the clinch is physically exhausting. It's very, very intense. And I don't think people really understand that. And I think I've been stabbed twice and I didn't know I was stabbed. And
Oh,
that's like a lot of people's experience is like they get stabbed with a knife. They just like they think it feels like you're getting punched or something like that or kicked or whatever. And and people think that the knife is kind of like creating that same like kinetic trauma that you would being shot, and it's not the same thing. It's messy, because it's you bleed everywhere, but it's like it's not the same thing. It just like it doesn't feel the same, and you don't fight the same way. And as far as also it's like you have to always do it at a deficit. You still have to give the objective reason of why you pulled a knife out on somebody. And I don't think people really think of that enough. I think people don't even know, like when I tell people like, oh, have you looked up like your local laws on knife carry or knife, what kind of knife you want, like what's the difference between a dagger or a gravity knife. So things of that nature. As far as I want to make people informed consumers,
yeah.
and also show them how to train with the knives that they get. Because a lot of times people will also buy a utility knife or a folder and think like, okay, cool, I'm good for self defense, and it's just like, you need a purpose built knife. So that's why we'll have something like like the shivworks and which is not legal everywhere, right? But
Right.
a small fixed blade like a clinch pick, that's pretty much you're good, even in New York. So, so that's kind of where
Wonderful.
I'm teaching people. Is mostly focus on the application of a knife.
That's great. Yeah, and I'm glad this topic came up. This actually hasn't been something that's been discussed on the podcast since probably Aaron Janetti or Eli Knight came on. I can't remember who came on
Mhm.
second, but I'm glad you're bringing this up because I've even had a few friends lately. We've like gone out for dinner and maybe a drink. I just because I like to carry, I just tend not to drink. That's just kind of what I end up doing because
Yeah.
I'd have to compromise that. And anyway, moving past that though, I've been out with a few girlfriends and they've been like, "Oh, I'm good. I have my knife," and they'll pull out their folding knife and it's like some like
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's sharpened kind of thing. And
Yeah.
you're like, "I'm good." I'm like, "Oh, so
Yeah.
cool. So like, what training have you done with it?" And they're like, What do you mean?" It's a
Yep.
knife. But I'm like, man, it's
Oh
not a rabbit's
no.
foot. So I get
Yeah.
to a
Right.
point where I don't know what I should say in that moment. And so I always, it's weird because I know if I don't say anything, then I'm kind of dooming them. But also,
Yeah.
they almost feel they have this like false sense of security. And it's like, man, I'm about to just strip that away. Like,
Mhm.
let's talk about this kind of thing. I even
Yeah.
got to a point where I stopped carrying a knife. Like after KCC, I realized how much I didn't know. And
Mhm.
I was like, I'm gonna stick to my pistol. I understand that a little bit more, and I always have my pepper spray, and I train with my pepper spray. Even I got the little inert bottle, and I
Nice.
even train with that, and like transitioning from pepper spray to pistol, things like that. I don't post a lot of that because I feel underqualified in that area, but that's something that is so important. So if you had like a message to someone, maybe someone's listening and they're realizing that they are similar to some of my girlfriends I go out with on a Friday night. What would you maybe say to them if they were wanting to start their journey and actually training with a knife?
I would say at least for the most part, like most of the people I know and the circles I run in, they're always open to a conversation. It's not like, oh, well, you got to pay my $300 consultation fee. Like, no, no, no one is really doing that, right? Like,
Right.
look, like how we got on this podcast, right? You messaged me
Right.
on IG, and I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. So
Yes. Yes.
it's like everyone's very approachable for the most part, very nice. I don't. I could at least speak for myself on at least circles I run in, like approachable, very kind, very generous, and open to dialogue. So at a minimum, you should at least try to use that resource, right? You can always like think about like all the people you could reach out to on just Instagram or Facebook or TikTok. So most
Yeah.
people, if you send them a DM on like, hey, what do you think of XYZ? They'll probably talk to you. Or like, hey, do you got like, hey, can you set up a phone call and we can set up an appointment to talk? And most people will do that. I mean, I would.
Yeah.
It's because most people don't really go to those lanes. I mean, definitely have your questions in mind and just like, hey,
Yeah.
tell me what to do. It's just like, bro, I don't even know you. Like, I can't just tell
Right.
you what to do. So like,
Right.
have like, hey, this is my plan of action. This is what I'm trying to do. This is how I'm trying to implement it. What are your thoughts? And I'll give you my honest opinion on it. Now, you got to be open to the fact that, like, if I say this product sucks, that's not me saying you suck. You don't
Right.
have to, like, you shouldn't take it up personal, right?
Right.
It's like the stakes are too high to be so invested in a product or an idea of some kind.
Yeah.
And so we really want to make sure that we are focused on what is, not what ought to be. And
Yes.
again, it's like everyone needs a coach, so just find one. And most of the time, they'll talk to you, and it'll be fine.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I even worry that in those moments, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, I don't ever want to shame someone for wanting to feel safer and
Mhm.
bring something with them to feel safer. And so there is like a fine line with like how you talk to people,
Yeah.
not shaming them but kind of like helping them see a perspective that they've never been given before, and it's really not their fault. It's a lack of education. It's a
Yeah.
lack of, I think, exposure too of this type of training on social media. A lot of it gets shadow banned in the first place, but
Yeah.
also it's not on everyone's For You page. So how would you know about it, kind of thing? So yeah. And now I feel great about this podcast. Was the reason I started it in the first place, was to talk about the things that don't get talked about enough. So I feel now that I could just refer them to an episode in a way. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah. And
So,
I'm
so
open to conversations as well. And the other thing too that what
yeah,
you're saying is really important because
yeah,
I see a lot of instructors make the mistake of like somebody says, "Hey, I'm carrying a Springfield. My aunt Susie is carrying a Springfield XD. Like, what holster does she need? Like, oh well, your aunt Susie's a retard for carrying a Springfield." And it's just like,
right,
why would you do that? Like,
right. Yes,
so it's like
man.
so what you're doing is like something that I think we need to get better at. I think
Yeah,
a lot of people that they're um my issue with this industry is just like in jiu-jitsu everybody's fighting each other,
yeah,
so because of that everyone's very nice to each other, but it's like people aren't doing the force on force for the most part, so they're not very nice a lot of times. They're very very
right,
like speaking a very matter of fact, speak to you at a downward angle. And I think that's just kind of like if we're trying to save the Second Amendment. We're trying to make it sure where we have the freedom of protection. Like we need to get more people involved, and you do that by being polite, being welcoming. All right, like it's like the gun carrying is a Southern thing. Like, well, Southern hospitality is synonymous with the South, so let's be
right.
hospitable. So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yes. I feel like those are definitely two extremes of
yeah,
like social media. Either A, it's completely ignored and, there's no exposure. And then the other side is completely shaming people for, trying to learn and
yeah,
educate. I like to fall back on my Instagram handle because it's fit for Fia. It's what like
yeah,
fits for me. And I'm not
yeah,
saying that it's the correct answer. I'm not an extremist view of anything. So
yeah.
yeah, it's my little fallback. But
There you
yes,
go.
I agree. I think there could be some improvement. I even mentioned this on an episode recorded last night with one of my good friends. There's a page we found where a a woman in the industry, and again, I'm trying to be kind of vague. She screenshotted a message a guy wrote in, and he said something like, do you think a woman should start with a 22 as opposed to like a 9mm? And she responded with, you should just let the woman choose. Men need to stop pushing their agendas on women, and just like totally outside of the scope of what this man was asking. He was genuinely asking for help. And
Right.
if you were to see the I think it was a tweet actually, if you were to see it, you would you'd see what I mean. Like, it was in no way like, it's so dumb that my partner won't get into shooting. Do you think she should shoot? It was just a very basic question. So to shame people that are trying to do their best and improve is not the move. So
right.
Totally agree. Yes. So I'd like to pivot a little bit to the like concealed carry training side of things. So something I have trouble with in my own training is I think it's easy to stand and just draw from concealment and present fully and shoot. And even when I'm doing like my concealed carry outfit series, what I really do is just at the end, I'll show like a draw on that outfit to kind of prove I can draw from it easily. And also, like, I do the draws anyway, so I kind of just go ahead and record them, and it works out really well. I'm trying to balance that training with more force on force training as much as I can get without having someone, in a motorcycle helmet next to me in a motorcycle helmet. So I'll find like a bob to train with, or I even have my own little like standing punching bag at my mom's house. So when I visit there, I'll train there as well. But for someone who's trying to balance their concealed carry draws, their at-home training, and their maintenance training, what advice would you give to them?
Like if they're trying to do like force to force, like a 1-on-1, so and their tool is a bob.
Yes, or even just maybe they don't even have a bob, because I saw some of your videos on Instagram are you're training on the range, practicing the high pectoral index. I'm not sure if that's what you call it, but you're practicing
thumb pectoral index.
Thumb pectoral index. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Man, I just messed that up. But yes. So
it's okay.
How would you what would you say to someone who's trying to balance that training with just like the stand and shoot from 5-10 yards?
Sure. I think everyone's got to work within their limits, right? It's just like, and kind of like push through them, do what you can consistently. I think consistency over time is going to lead to skill development and mastery. So whatever you can do over consistently, I think is going to be better. Just make sure you're doing the right things and you're knowing why you're doing what you're doing. So that's kind of like the caveat, right?
Right.
Now, as far as for on the range, if I'm doing it live fire, I'm going to be incredibly deliberate, and that doesn't necessarily mean slow or, that's just kind of a byproduct of it, right? Like if I'm working on the retention shooting, I'm going to be incredibly deliberate, because if we think about it, when I'm actually using or applying retention shooting, it's going to be against a fully resistant opponent who is trying to fight me. I've got to control them. My arm is my other arm is going to be fending or working to get some kind of pin. And I'm going to be applying head control. There's going to be base. There's going to be posture. There's going to be pressure. There's going to be all this thing going on, all this back and forth. So I can't do that with a target, right? So pretty much everything I do with a stationary target that isn't resisting me, anything is going to work. Okay. So I'd rather for that part, the most valuable thing for me is going to be deliberate access and a focused approach to making sure I have consistency of shot placement. Okay. So everywhere I go, every time I go on there, I go on the target, my head will be in the same spot. I want my rounds touching within an inch of each other. If I can make that happen, then I'm going to try to make it to where it's within a half inch. If I can make that happen, then I want them on top of each other. And I'm going to figure out how to do that. So I'm really focused on my body positioning, my posture, my balance, all that. That's really, it's not exciting or as thrilling as rolling around in the dirt and having and shooting at somebody or having been shot at. But that's the stuff that is what I'm talking about as far as spreading the base, being aware of where your body is, every single position. So that way, you know, whether when you try to draw at speed or you're doing it when it matters, when you get to the place where you're doing it on force, or if you know, God forbid, have to do that for real, you've done it so many times that you have such a proprioception of where that shot is going to land. That's going to serve you a lot better than just kind of running around and trying to burn down a target and having no idea where it is. It's a lot of fun and it makes for great content, but it's not really skill development. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah, so a
Mhm.
lot of skill development and mastery for skills is like it's doing a lot of repetitive, boring work. so
Yes. Yeah.
so yeah, so if you're gonna do live fire, that's the thing I will work on. Now if you're gonna work on something like a punching bag, I'd start with like thinking about articulating, right? Like that's at least this is how I approach it. This is how John does it. Stand at the bob. I'm thinking about keeping my hands up. I'm making sure that if I'm working my fence, that it's not here by my waist, it's up by my face. And you know, I'll work in, I'll do a cover, I'll create some distance, right, and then draw. And also, I'm not always just drawing like straight on the target. I'm also drawing to a low ready as well, because that may be a situation where just a strong, robust draw, it's enough to take all the fight out that person. They don't want any more of this problem. So, and also it's like I'm mitigating the risk of getting that kind of that aggravated assault charge for pointing a gun at somebody that doesn't want to fight me. So things of that nature, right? You always want to think about things of going from like a progressive manner, right? You don't want
Yeah.
to like just start on the extreme end. And
Mm.
because now you're kind of almost conditioning yourself to like take things to like 10, and sometimes a 3 will do. So
Absolutely.
yeah, that's how I approach it, at least. So that's fit for
Yes.
John.
Yes. Very nice.
So,
Good one. Good one.
yeah.
Yes, that's so important. I think about that all the time, even when I'm just at the range showing someone the fundamentals of drawing. I will always talk about how, like, this is not the first step. This is step 5, after like verbal de escalation
Yeah.
and utilizing, other resources. This is like very much down the line. So, and I even get a lot of comments on TikTok when I have videos about talking about what I've learned from Craig's classes and trying to also just get people over to Craig.
Yeah.
I've talked about that, and I'll get these men in my comments. And yes, they're mostly men. I don't think I've had a woman say this yet, and that's why I say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But it's things like pew pew is always the solution, or like just shoot them, or something just like so just takes away from my entire point and is so aggravating.
Yeah.
Ultimately, they are boosting my algorithm to then get
Yeah.
onto the pages of people that deserve to hear it. But
Yeah.
it's such a misconception. And honestly, I've never thought about the other side of that. Is like I've never thought about concealed carry as a means to be able to shoot someone. But I also never thought about it as like what step it should really be in a response to an attack until I put myself in front of someone like Craig Douglas and now you and other incredible guest speakers that have come on. So it's a constant reminder that there are so many steps before that. And then like somewhere down the line, I realized I need to start putting that into my everyday training. So
Mhm.
it probably connected for me a bit slower than I wish it would have. And that's why I'm trying to get more emphasis on that on the podcast. So I'm glad
Yeah.
you brought that up. Really glad you brought that up. Yes. Do you also get into pepper spray as well in your classes, or do you mention that? I know it's kind of
I haven't really messed with it too much because people
okay.
don't typically come to me for that.
Gotcha. Okay.
They want to kind of like go from concealed carry to being able to be able to fight with a gun in their hand, or fighting while being armed or stuff like that. That's kind of like what people typically come to me for. There are other people that are really good for that, but I always recommend pepper spray. It's always really good with someone who's really aggressive and really loud and like screaming in your face, and just like,
Yeah.
give them a good little seasoning. And like they
Yes.
all of a sudden they want to leave you alone. It's magic.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
so yeah, I think pepper spray is great for that situation. And so yeah, I recommend it a lot, especially the palm pepper spray. I think is the best.
Yes. Absolutely. I was walking in the park with my dad the other day. He's in his mid 60s now, and um, I thought he had my keys because he has the same pepper spray on his keys that I do. And I was so proud of him. I'm pretty sure I got it for him. I just can't remember. So I
Nice.
ended up not saying that, but I was really proud of him because yeah, he gets approached a lot. He travels so much. He's Cuban. I'm Cuban, and
Hmm.
I don't look it at all because my
Yeah.
mom's super white. She's from Oklahoma,
Yeah.
but
No, no, you
um,
do. You do.
I look
Ma-
Cuban.
No, you look Latina for real. Because and the
Really?
reason why I say that, yeah, my wife is light skinned like you.
Really? Okay. And
Yep.
she's
She's
what is
Puerto
her?
Rican.
Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful. Okay,
Hmm.
I take that as a
Yeah.
compliment. No,
Yeah.
that's very cool. I've
All right.
definitely been in like my AP Spanish classes in high school.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the kids in there didn't think I belonged in there, and so they would like keep talking
Yeah.
about me, and I would just like
Yeah.
respond to them in
Yeah.
Spanish, and um, it ended up being okay. It wasn't like a big deal, but I remember
That's
feeling so
awesome.
awkward. I'd be like, "Hey, man, I actually understand you. Like, you might want to stop talking. You're going to be
Yeah.
like really embarrassed here in a minute."
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's really funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, he travels all the time, and of course, he's gotten approached quite a bit. So I think he's gotten to a place where he's realized like he is not the exception. Like just because he's not a woman who's traveling
Mhm.
alone. So
Yeah.
I'm proud of him for that. So something I meant to ask you earlier on, for those who do not know what thumb pectoral index means, could you please
Mhm.
describe that to the listeners?
Yes.
Okay.
So the thumb pectoral index, okay, it provides a consistent place for you as a person trying to use a pistol in a confined space to have a consistent shot placement and a consistent anchor for as far as where you're going to fire your pistol from. And what you are doing is mitigating a grab of the pistol because, again, this is applied within confined space. It means we're very close to each other or that person's very, very close to you. So you're mitigating first them grabbing the pistol because it's incredibly easy to cause a pistol to malfunction when you grab over the slide. Incredibly easy. It will not blow up your hand. I've demoed it. You can go on my YouTube channel. It will not hurt you. It's not comfortable. It's not something I recommend you try at home, but you can watch me do it. So, and the second thing is that because of I haven't been able to prove this yet, right? This is pure bro science, but well, I can't say it's pure science because the reason why I say that is because like, I've heard of situations where police officers they will shoot somebody with a spear gold dot at 10 yards and it'll overpenetrate. Okay.
Okay.
And so I believe the thumb pectoral index is also mitigating for overpenetration. So that way you're not really endangering the public by letting rounds fly down range. Okay.
Right.
And all the energy is at the muzzle as far as when you're shooting a pistol. So if it's very, very close, like we can really discuss like, yeah, like there's some good circumstances there to believe like yeah there's likely going to be some over penetration. And now I know people are going to kind of hear that and be like, oh well, I've got hollow points, blah blah blah. It's just like, okay, so what you're telling me is that you're the only person in the world who has a non-penetrating penetrator. Is that what you're really trying to bank on that? So and then, like when people think about it, it's like, oh shit, yeah, you're right. So I think that the thumb pectoral index is also for that as far as mitigating a gun grab and mitigating likely over penetration. And so that and it also gives you consistency. So whether you've just been hit or you're wearing something different today than you normally would, maybe you're wearing a big t-shirt instead of a blouse or your cardigan or you're wearing body armor. It's like it provides, it's like also you are preventing malfunction for that gun coming up into your chest or something like that. That standoff, that what you do with your thumb is you give enough standoff so that way the slide can reciprocate.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
I don't know if I just like was blown away by all of the information, but I don't remember the part the part about the over penetration and
Yeah.
like taking care of the potential like innocent bystanders behind the attacker. I honestly just thought I completely missed that. I think so. This is great to learn.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like thumb pectoral index, now that I've talked about it so much in the episodes, but I don't think anyone, besides Craig, has like really talked about what it is. So
Mhm.
thank you for explaining that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That definitely blew me away when I tried that for the first time. And of course, shooting that close to you is like, if you've never done that before, it's definitely like something to experience. Like
Yes.
it's,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, realistically, we can do a lot of the techniques. Like we could do that with the airsoft gun or blue gun or stuff
Oh,
like
okay.
that.
Yeah.
But as far as like getting that experience of like having your gun, feeling that concussion come off the target, like having like head control and like feeling your pistol go off that close to your face, it's like it's very intense the first
Yes.
time. So I think it's something that you've got to experience. Like you've got to experience. Also, only do it with a trained professional. Make sure that you
Yes.
guys consult with somebody. Don't just go out there and do it on your own. It's
Right.
just that's really where the risk comes out, where people just like kind of like, oh yeah, I saw that on IG, and I'm gonna just go do it that way. Like,
Yeah.
don't do that. Go get a go consult
Yeah.
with somebody. So
That makes a lot of sense. I have two questions from that. One,
sure.
because I don't want to forget them. One, what is it called when you feel that, like, and I should probably know this, but I'm just such a novice instructor, so I'm just going to let this slide. But what is
Good.
it called when you feel like the round, like some of the spray? One, and two, if someone is interested in training this, are there any online courses you feel like are safe enough, that are detailed enough, or do you think they need to go in person for the first time to train this?
Yeah, I would say yes to that because that's kind of
Okay.
yes. Go see
Okay.
it. Go get a coach. Get a coach.
Coach. Yes.
Or and the other thing. I'm sorry, I forgot your other question. As far
No,
as
it's okay.
sorry, what was your first question?
Nope, you're fine. I shouldn't have done that, but I was afraid I would forget one or the other.
Yeah.
The like
Yeah.
kind of spray feeling.
Oh
You
yes,
get, yes.
concussion. I call that like the concussion, the concussion
Okay.
blast. Yeah.
That's what that is. Okay.
Yeah.
So is that particularly dangerous? Because I know after so many rounds, I was like, damn, am I like inhaling this? Like
No.
probably am, but like,
So what could be dangerous is if you have a ported barrel.
okay.
Then you might get some spalling and it'll come and hit you. It'll start cutting you up, cut your neck and face up a little bit. So that could be
Oh,
dangerous to you. So
okay.
don't do it. So that's why, like, for like a lot of guys who are doing this and been doing it a bit, or have somebody like Craig to teach them, is like they're not going to allow you to use ported barrels at their courses because of the spalling.
Okay.
All right, that'll hurt you.
Yeah.
Um, as far as like slide cuts, it's not the same thing as a ported
Okay.
barrel, right? But yeah, it's kind of the main thing there. That's not really dangerous. It's just jarring. It's a jarring thing to experience that, because it's not something we typically experience, because most of that concussion is kind of like pointed outward, because we're kind of
Right.
always pointing the gun down range. So now we're feeling that sound come back and like kind of come
Yeah.
back off the target.
Yeah.
So so it's not dangerous. It's just jarring.
That makes sense. And for those listening, and maybe even me who like don't know what a ported barrel is, how would you describe or explain that?
So the barrel is actually where the bullets are coming out of. So you have
Right.
the slide will lock back, right, and then you see
Right.
kind of like the metal cylinder, right, where the
Yes.
bullet's actually coming out of. That part, if there are like holes in there, right, cuts into
Oh,
that. That's
okay.
just that's where the barrel. That's the barrel. If the barrel is ported, they have holes in
Okay.
that. That's going to be prohibited. Now,
I
the
see.
part that's reciprocating, going back, that's the slide. If there's cuts in the slide, it doesn't really doesn't bother, right? But
Okay.
if you're really on the fence, or like that's not making sense, like hit somebody, contact somebody, like, hey, what is this and that, and then we'll go through it for the most part, and
Okay.
like that, they don't have no problem with that.
And what is the benefit of having a ported barrel? Is it a competition thing?
It's mostly for competition things. So like
Okay.
it's because the gases are coming out of the top of the barrel, so
Mm.
it's like keeping the muzzle flatter,
Yes.
instead of correcting your grip, I suppose. But so yeah,
Yeah, that makes
yeah,
sense. Yeah.
so it's just like one of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, to
Another
just keep the
reason.
bit. Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. Very cool. And have you ever dabbled in competition shooting? Is that
Yeah,
something?
yeah. I
Okay.
shot for the first time, a first major match this year. Is So I got serious about it like in January, right? Like I
Okay.
was always like kind of dabbling in it. And then I got
Yeah.
serious about USPSA in January, went to a classifier, got made C class in carry optics. So,
That is
but
amazing.
anyway,
Yeah.
it's, yeah, I shot my first major, the Dragons Cup, which is like a hell of a major to shoot you first. So it was really
Okay.
intense.
I'm
So
not familiar with it,
what's
but
that?
I'm not familiar with the Dragons
Yeah.
Cup.
Oh yeah, it's a big match. So like a lot of people come. It's like right. Uh, at least the way it was explained to me, people compare it to like a national level match. It's just like right
Okay. Okay.
under national, or it's on par with any national because you got people from all over the country coming out to come and
I
do this
see.
match, and they come
I
out
see.
to Odessa, Texas. Yeah, it was a really intense match. It was like not easy.
I'm
So
sure.
yeah,
Yeah, so the
but
stages were more complex
oh
than
yeah, very
usual.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Like, and
Okay.
I totally bombed like two stages. Like I zeroed out two stages. So I'm not ashamed to talk about it. Like you go on practice
Yeah.
score, look it up. So
Right. That is
so
public.
yeah,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
anyway, yeah. But it was a hell of a match. It was difficult. And I've been shooting locals every now and then. I kind
Yeah.
of had to take a break for the last couple months because I'm working night shift right now.
Okay.
So kind of like doing that all day after working all night is a bit hard on a family life,
Right.
but yeah,
Yes.
like I love USPSA. It's a lot of fun. And it's something I highly
Yeah.
recommend. As far as shooting fast and aggressive, and then making decisions, using your pistol to solve problems. It's just I think there's nothing better. As at least it's the best we have right now.
That's wonderful. I was actually going to ask you how you felt like that applied to your more self-defense training, style
Mhm.
training. Do you want to expand on that, or is that
I would say it's like extracting. It's like when you look at MMA and there's all these different skills associated with MMA. There's
Mhm.
boxing, there's wrestling, there's jiu-jitsu, there's Muay Thai. I would say like it's like taking one of those elements and getting hyper specific on it, right? And getting really,
Right.
really good at that one thing. So as far as the marksmanship and the fast shooting and processing information and using my pistol to solve a problem, I think it does a great job there. Right. It's
Wonderful.
like anything else though. Once we get into the points of specialization, that's when people start to get off azimuth as far as like what we were actually trying to do. So as long as you keep it a means to an end as opposed to the end itself, like it'll always be beneficial. It's just
Yeah.
like once like, and there's nothing wrong with enjoying a game either, right? If
Right.
you're really really serious about that, that's fine. But it's like that's what happens to everyone, right? It's what happened to judo. It's what happened to karate. It's what happened to taekwondo. It happened to jujitsu. It's like once we start getting into the point where all we care about is winning the game, we're definitely away from the fighting side. It's everyone. Like that's it. Like it's like human nature. You're not immune to it, right?
Right.
So
Yes.
that's just what happens, and that's okay, right? Because like there are things we'll be able to extract. Like you'll be able to teach me some cool stuff, or from being really really good. Um, but that's the only thing that is like you can kind of see where people have issues on the self defense side is like because like they're analyzing everything through the lens of winning a game as
Yeah.
opposed to like the totality of the circumstances that apply within a self-defense situation. So it's the
Yeah.
same thing with everything. It's like uh, getting into it. I kind of knew what I was getting into right away, and I can kind of see like the good and the bad. I never look at. It's like if people will ask me like, "Hey, should I do this or that?" I'll typically say yes. Right. So,
Yes. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. None of this is black and white in my opinion. So
Correct.
that's one of my, I got a DM from someone the other day who, and I actually would love to ask you about this. This is great. Okay. Here we go.
Sure.
So I posted a video with me just pulling from my concealed carry outfit to
Mhm.
just like prove to the viewers that like this is a feasible motion. Of course, it is like the most perfect scenario where someone is running at me from 20 yards, and I get to stand there and what I mean. That would I do that? No, but anyway, moving on. Um, and this person who was actually at ECQC with me, interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to. Okay, there's a part of the story I don't know if I want to tell you. I'll wait on that. But he wrote me and he was like, you need to stop looking down so much. And I wrote him back and I was like, hey man, like, good to hear from you. You know, thanks for writing. Like, I'd love to talk about this. So what do you mean by that? And he was like, when you're reholstering, like, you don't need to look down. And I was like, okay. And I told him, I was like, let's talk about this. So I said, my perspective, why I do this is, this is given, you know, like the situation is handled. You know, no one is actively attacking me. I feel like it's a good time to put my concealed carry weapon back in my holster, because at ECQC, actually, during one of the sims, this is so dumb and embarrassing, but I'm just going to say it. So the two guys I was assigned with, one of them, Craig told one of them to like attack the other once one of them attacked me. You know how he sets, obviously know all that. Oh my gosh. And I actually holstered my weapon after I felt like I needed to pull it. And later during the debriefing, Craig agreed that it was a good time to pull it. So that he gave me the thumbs up for that. And that made me feel great. But I reholstered it and was like trying to get one of the guys off of the other guys. And Craig was like, stop. He was like, why did you holster? Like, and I was like, I don't know. I thought it was okay to put my gun away. So that was a big conversation we had. That was a learning moment. So of course, in these videos, which are obviously just to show me showing up, you know, a carry method with a certain outfit to kind of inspire people who maybe like to dress like me, or have, like, in that video, it was a jean skirt, which is like, I thought it'd be helpful to show carry in a jean skirt for summer. So his comment was about me looking down to make sure that I reholster correctly. I push my hips out. I like to watch the muzzle go in. I like to watch my index finger, make sure it's sitting high enough on the slide so that it doesn't like accidentally creep into my trigger guard. And I wrote him back saying, hey man, like, first of all, this is under the circumstances that A, it's okay for me to put my gun up. And B, if I'm putting a loaded gun near my body, I'm going to look where it's going, man. Like, just kind of letting him know. And he wrote me this long paragraph about how he has friends. He's not in law enforcement. He said he has friends in law enforcement who have been rushed when they are holstering, and they have been injured as a result. And so I'd love to hear your ideas on this. And I ended up saying to him, just kind of tell you my response. I said that makes a lot of sense. Like, it makes sense that would happen if maybe they misjudged the situation, or maybe their training wasn't there. I don't know. I said, and I'm not law enforcement, of course. And then I said something like, of course, this isn't a black and white answer. Like, there are two sides to this. There are a lot of, I feel like, things you need to consider in this situation. So I feel like that's where we're going wrong here. Like, and he wrote me back basically the same thing he said before, how he said something like, well, it's your gunfight, but I have friends in law enforcement. And I was like, okay, I left the conversation at that point. I didn't feel like it was very like, anyway, purposeful. Go ahead. I would love to hear what you have to say to that.
I think you've answered a lot of your own questions. Just leaving that conversation kind of like already answers it for you. That shit makes my eyes roll so hard. I'm getting vertigo. Like, okay.
Awesome.
Right, dude. Your friends in law enforcement. Sure, bud. Oh my God. No. Not even no. Hell no. So it's a lot of that is like that, like, look your gun into or don't look at it from the holster. A lot of that comes from like some operator in a faraway land shot somebody and the guy was down, and while he looked to holster, the fucking guy zombied his way up and killed the guy. Like, that is just silly. Make believe. No. And if guys are like rushing the holster, how is it that looking was the reason for the injury as opposed to negligent with the trigger finger? Like, how is that a thing? Like, it's like people, they come up with these things and they say, oh, well, they say these platitudes, they have these sayings and whatnot. They repeat this nonsense. And it's like, dude, you like think through that. Like, how did that happen? Like, you really think the reason why he hurt himself was because he was looking, or he was negligent as far as where his trigger placement was? And in that case, where his eyes were wouldn't have affected not even the slightest bit. If that's true. Okay. If that's true. And I doubt it's true. And the other thing I'll say, love you, LE guys, gals. You guys are not that great with pistols, though. I'm sorry to say it, but you guys got a lot of work to do. Love y'all to death. Love y'all like a play cousin, but got a lot of work to do. It's all right, though. You know, I work in law enforcement now, and they're like, look, some of y'all should be carrying a sharp stick. I'm just saying. So, in any case.
I've never heard that. That's awesome.
In any case, so yeah, there's just like, it's just the disparity of skill within law enforcement. There's such a spectrum of people. Like, you got a guy that like legitimately was Delta Force at one point in his life, or he's like trained himself to at that point where like that dude is like, the only reason why he's not on a SWAT team is because his department doesn't have one, right? But then you got some people that are like, I need money. It's always been a passion of mine to not be starving to death. So they got the department was hiring, so I'm here. Right. It's like, that's really funny. That's okay, right? So, so in any case, it's like, so the disparity of skill law enforcement is like, it's so extreme. It's hard to like really say like, okay, let's assess what we're doing with that. But like, let's take like a principle approach here, right? Like you said, okay, I am practicing. Okay, that's what I'm doing. I'm practicing, and firearms training is inherently dangerous. So anytime the gun's out here, it will not hurt me. However, a lot of people, because of like they're excessive with the safety side, they get really, really slow on the draw. And it's like, why? It's like, so from a practical perspective, if I need my gun out, I don't need it now. I need it right freaking now. So it's got to come out fast, and it's got to come out on target, or it's going to come out to a low ready, whatever, right? That draw stroke has to be strong and robust, and it has to be fast. So with that in mind, like, why am I worrying about going slow? Okay. Yeah. So now I've already solved the problem I need to solve, right? So let's think about that. The problem is solved. I'm no longer facing any threats. Putting it away. When the gun comes towards me, that's when it'll hurt me. Okay. So from that perspective, practicing, I should probably do it in a way that it's not going to hurt me. So I'm going to make sure I look that thing into the muzzle. I'm going to kick my hips out, kick them forward. So that way if the muzzle's going into the holster, it's not pointed at me, whatever. There's a freak accident, it'll discharge right in front of me. I think that's just from a principle perspective. That's the right answer. Okay. So, but yeah, anyway.
Thank you for the validation. I actually screenshotted it and sent it to my friend, and I was like, am I crazy? Because when people repeat themselves, while I feel pretty confident in what I say, I also understand that I have a lot to learn. So when people challenge me like that, it makes me really think like, okay, let's think about this like really deeply. And I'll send it around to my people I consider, level-headed in the industry. And my response to that, the responses I got to that screenshot, were very much in line, and also presented some other topics. And I'll tell you, I don't want to say it on here just because I don't want to share this publicly, but I'll tell you something about that. Remind me ECQC afterwards, after the show. But yes, thank you for sharing that. And also the way in which it was said, and I know social media is one of those things, like you cannot sense like tone through text. You just can't. Emojis help with that sometimes. Sometimes they hurt, but I tried to start the conversation off with like, hey man, like I'd love to talk about this. And there was kind of none of that back. And what I've found is the men and women that are normally very helpful start the conversation off with like, hey, I'd love to have this discussion with you. I think you would benefit from thinking about this. And like, I love stuff like that. That's part of why I don't consistently post, but the reason I post on social media, because it's also sharing my journey. And I even talked about, or I haven't posted it yet, but I just filmed yesterday something, and it'll probably be posted by the time this episode comes out, but about fanny pack carry. I've been carrying with a fanny pack for a while, in the sense that like, if I go for a neighborhood walk and it's hot AF outside, and I don't want to holster, like, or something like that. I'll have a fanny pack, especially if it's like a very empty neighborhood and I'm keeping completely observant, and maybe I'll have time to like bring it around to my front. So I recorded a video on this, and I'm just like preparing myself for the comments, and a lot of it is to bring up the issues with fanny pack carry as well. So, but it's funny, even though I'll have a video with like great intentions of like bringing up both sides, I always get people that like say things just like that DM. So anyway,
it's the other thing too, is like sometimes you gotta just, there's two things to that, right? And just as somebody who you're a content creator, like you're doing it a lot better than mine. So I'll just say, like, for me, like what has helped me out as far as dealing with negative comments, like I have people like legitimately comment on my stuff. Hey, what do you know about combatives? Like, dude, So I just like link them the video of me getting my black belt from Matt Larsen. Just like, shut up, dude. Like, did you even? So anyway, it's like, so it's like, and then I was like, all right, well, let me not even deal with that. So I started looking at like, you know what? I like whatever I am doing better than whatever that person's not doing. And the other thing is that like all these comments are coming from people who no one is paying them for their advice. Right. So like I got the running joke of like, if you want like free advice from world-class experts, just post anything about fitness, fighting, or money. And it's like all of a sudden, like the world-class experts like, oh, I have all this free advice to give you. That
is so funny. Yes. I love that.
So, especially if you're a lady, man. It's like, Jesus Christ. Like Annette Evans, right? Like speaking of Annette, like I think Annette would be like one of the most sought after instructors in the country if she was a dude. Like the only reason, like she's a B-class shooter. She was a sponsored shooter, right? Badass jiu-jitsu purple belt, knows about the integrated game, knows about the shooting game, wears both hats very, very well. But is a lady. So for some reason, it's like, oh, she's taken less serious. Like, no, I'm probably sure she could beat up every man you ever met. So like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's just like, I don't know. It's just ego, just kind of typical ego stuff. And you know, I don't stress it. It's like, dude, like no one's paying you for advice. So
just be quiet. Yes. 100%. Yes. My favorite response is thank you for boosting my algorithm. Yep. And then the best response I've gotten to that is I don't care about your algorithm. I'm like, I don't think you get what I'm trying to say. Like, thank you is your comment. And then it became this thing. And then people started responding to that. And I was like, yes. Like,
yes. Right.
Right. So totally missed the mark on like what I was trying to say. But oh my goodness.
I win. I'm right. And I win. So.
Yes, absolutely. Well, this has been an incredible episode. I don't feel like I've had an episode about combatives in a while, so this was just a joy for me. And before we end the episode, is there anything you would like to share with the listeners?
Hey, if anybody wants to get a hold of me, I'm easy to find. Just look up John Valentine Combatives. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Yes. And I will have all of your information linked in the show notes per usual, as well as the Combatives Association Summit. But not before I secure my spot. I might have a honeymoon around that time, but, I wouldn't mind moving my honeymoon for this.
Central Florida is a great place. Central Florida is a great place for a honeymoon. So just saying.
That's a really good point. And you know what? Like my fiance does carry. So this, oh my gosh, this could be part of the honeymoon. Okay, I'll talk to him about that later.
And you guys would be the first. You guys would be the fourth couple in a class that I've trained. Yep.
Really, that's amazing. I'm sure that's interesting. That dynamic. Have you had a good experience with that so far?
For the most part, yeah. For the most part, yes, yeah. So I haven't had any issues. So some people say like it hasn't been good for them. I guess for like shooting classes, but I guess like for fighting classes, it's like it's. People. Yeah, I haven't had an issue. I don't know.
That kind of makes sense to me because it's probably more out there for like the male and female. Like there's probably no like inside teaching trying to go on. I know I tried to teach a family member of mine and his or her partner. I'm not going to be specific. And like I could barely get a word in edgewise because. One of them wanted to share what they knew the whole time. And I was like, oh my God, I have to like be careful with this later on in my career. Like it was kind of my first taste of that. So, but
anyway. It's like, it's like trying to come to jiu-jitsu and like trying to talk about how much you know about fighting. It's just like for guys, it's always that like how strong you are really doesn't matter. And then for women, they experience that like, you know, they're a lot stronger than what they thought. So
Yeah.
so it's I guess because of like what we're doing, it's always been a better experience. And like I'm not sure like how that would be if I was doing a gun class or just a shooting class, because like you kind of like fake the funk a little bit there.
Yeah.
But so I don't know.
No, that's wonderful. Well,
Yeah,
thank you for sharing that perspective,
sure.
and thank you for sharing your story and so much great knowledge. I want to pay you for that. Such
Yeah.
incredible information, and I'm hoping that you know, if you're listening right now and you think someone could benefit from this episode, please share this episode. I don't say that a lot during episodes, but this is a truly great episode. So thank you so much, John.
Yeah, thank you.
If you, the listener, are interested in exclusive content with guest speakers, you can become a Patreon. You'll receive a thank you note and podcast stickers along with more exclusive content. You can visit She Shield on Instagram and TikTok for show updates, pictures of our guest speakers, and podcast highlights. A special thank you to Segeta Gear, one of the official sponsors of She Shield, for concealed carry gear and duty gear. You can use code SheShield10 for 10% off your Segeta Gear order. All resources mentioned in the episode will be linked in the show notes, which are the notes below the title. And if you like the podcast, you can help by liking, subscribing, and leaving a review. Lastly, if you or anyone you know is a firearms owner experiencing a crisis, you can look into holdmyguns.org. They are an organization that will connect you with a local gun shop or FFL to store your firearm for you. The link to access their website and find a local partner or storage location is in the show notes. In the meantime, stay safe and stay vigilant.